We are recording. Oh, hello everybody. Jackie D signing here. Don't know if I'm spiritual shepherdess anymore or Jed Talks but anyway, it's Jackie D in conversation. And today I am here with one of my dearest friends, Sharon Keenan. Hello, Sharon.
Hi, Jackie, lovely to see
Welcome.
you.
And Sharon and I have known each other for how many years?
Oh, I don't know.
Roughly
Quite a few. I can't remember.
8, 9. Are we in double figures yet? We might be.
We might even be double figures, possibly.
So, and we live fairly local, and Sharon has spoken when I was running my positive living group. Sharon spoke a few times, and I have to say she's one of my lovely speakers that always seem to overrun.
We tried not to, but it just always happened, didn't it?
It did, because people ask so many questions, and Sharon was so engaging with my audience that they just wanted to know more. And it was beautiful. Every time it was just beautiful, wasn't it, Sharon?
Yeah, it was always fun,
so,
always.
I've invited Sharon here today to tell us a little bit about what she does, why she does it, how she got where she is. So shall we just kick off, Sharon?
Yeah, let's just kick off, yeah.
What is it you do? How would you describe your work?
What is it I do? That's a really good question, and often I kind of change it because it kind of tweaks. It's kind of evolved as I've gone along. My work in the healing arts. So what do? What I do, the thread that runs through all of my work, is I help people regenerate with nature. Yeah. So I'm very much a nature advocate. I work with nature every day. I work with nature's rhythms and cycles. I work with natural plant remedies, flower essences, essential oils. So that's kind of what I do, and how that kind of looks in the world is, I began my journey as a body worker, as a therapist. Well, actually, no, go back. I began my journey as an archaeologist. I think that's quite important to get in.
Yes.
To get in. Have I ever told you that? I can't remember.
Yes, I do remember that, actually. Yeah.
And I think that's a really kind of important piece of the story in a way, because it was through that journey. And I always thought I would be an archaeologist. I had no notion of doing any of this kind of work at all. I loved it. It was my passion. It was so fascinating. And I'm still really fascinated by it. And a part of me would love to go back and work on a dig, just get in the soil, get a trowel out and just, just excavate, really. Yeah. And actually, when I look back now, that was such a great foundation for working in healing. Because in a way, we're all archaeologists when we work in healing, because we're all working with people. And also we're kind of uncovering stories and we're peeling back the layers.
Digging deep.
Because we're digging deep. Yeah. And we've all got things inside that have kind of been buried, covered over with stories, other people's programs, family patterns, society's programs and the collective. And as we kind of peel those away, then we can get to like the gold, if you like, the inner worth that's there. So I kind of like, when I look back at it now, it's like, that was actually the perfect start for me. But interestingly, when you're trained in archaeology, you're trained to be really cynical and really scientifically minded. Like, you don't believe anything until you've seen like tons of evidence for it.
Yeah.
And even then you just go, well, we don't have enough evidence yet. We're always kind of open to there being an explanation that includes all these other variables all the time.
Right.
So you end up kind of a forensic mind, but deeply, deeply cynical. And
like
I was that
there were
person.
Lots of layers to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, well, I don't know the truth about that layer. I can see it from where I am, but somebody else may have another story to that. Someone else may have another piece of understanding to that. So it helps us see that how multifaceted we are, all of us. All of us, we're all multifaceted. So, and it wasn't until I used a flower essence with a neighbour's cat. I was cat sitting for my neighbour. We're going back here to the mid-90s, I think, early 90s. Wow. And the reason I came out of archaeology was actually due to grief. My mum died very suddenly. I was 26 at the time, and my mum was 66, and it kind of really catapulted me into it really broke my heart, but also broke my mind as well. and I hadn't realised that. I didn't, and at the time I couldn't really do archaeology anymore at the time, because it meant a certain level of responsibility which I just didn't have. You know, I couldn't make a decision about what to have for breakfast, you know, never mind how to organize a group of people to do this thing, to get things ready for publication. I just, you know, anyone that's gone through that will know you don't have any brain cells to rub together.
It's part of the grief cycle.
It's all part of the grief cycle. So that was really what propelled me into my healing. Was I stepped back from that work, and I took other jobs, you know, like warehouse work and catering and all the things that you do to pay the bills. And I began to study aromatherapy as a hobby. Actually, it was a hobby with a specific aim, which was to help my friend in her pregnancy. She was pregnant with her second child. And I didn't know what oils were safe to use in pregnancy. And I'd had an interest in aromatherapy since I was about 16. My friend Nikki had given me a book on aromatherapy. And I'd kind of dabbled a little bit, but all I knew was you had to be really careful in pregnancy, what you were using. So my friend was really desperate for some help. And I'd done this kind of intuitive healing on her back through her first pregnancy, but she wanted that with oils. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. So I went to Southampton City Library and I got out all the books on aromatherapy at the time. I think there was about 6 of them at the time. And I just thought, okay, well, I know I've been trained to research. I'll just research it. I'll just do a cross index, find out what oils to use. Off we go. And every single book said something different.
Right.
Okay. So the archaeologist in me, the scientist in me, was like, what's going on here then? Well, where's the evidence for that? Because it all has to be backed up with evidence. You can't just say that about something with no evidence. So that set me on the mission, really, to find out just what oils were safe. That was it. And then I was going to go back to archaeology. But I did this course. It turned out it was an academic course. It was MVQ, and then I did an ITEC course. And I just kind of carried on, because what happened, as soon as I started working with oils and working with people, my healing channel opened.
Okay.
And it opened quite spontaneously in a actually reflexology class. I was learning reflexology at the same time, just because I was like interested. And like I said, I thought I was going to go back to my proper job, but obviously I've been put on this path. And yeah, so my channel opened, and that was that, really. So that was 1995. My channel opened.
Okay. So where did your cat come in?
Where did the cat come in? Well, the cat came in. Thank you, Sammy. His name was. I was living in a council flat in the middle of Southampton, and at that time, this is really interesting. The whole estate was being hooked up to the geothermal heating system, which is under Southampton. There's healing springs under Southampton, like there isn't. But yeah,
well,
and that's a whole. Well, there we go. And that's a whole other conversation. But that is so fascinating. But we are living on top of geothermal springs.
Wow.
And back in the day, Southampton was a site of healing for that reason. But all of that information has been buried. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm living in Southampton on top of all this, you know, as part of a bigger group of helping to bring this information to light, really. But yeah, the geothermal springs, like they have in Bath and Bristol, and there's also Chailey bit water here, like there is at the Chalice Well. It's huge. It's a huge, important site energetically, really. Anyway, so the whole of the estate, as long with Southampton Civic offices, all of West Key hadn't been built at the time, but the Royal Southampton Hospital are all connected to this grid.
Right, okay.
Of hot water.
I can't believe I've lived here nearly all my life and I didn't know that.
Well, this shows you about, I don't want to get into corruption too heavily in this conversation, but there's quite a lot. There's a lot of, I mean, why don't we all know that? Why aren't we all sharing in the magnificence of that amazing story? Yeah. Why is that information not available everywhere? We'll go off there. That is a separate conversation. But there's quite a lot there. There's a lot there, actually. But so what happened was I would always cat sit for my neighbour, and she was a single mum, and she managed to. I was so much respect for her. She managed to every year save up. She was on benefits and, you know, bring up her daughter on her own, and she always managed to save enough to take her daughter away on a 2-week holiday down to Cornwall.
Oh.
It was amazing. I mean, It was amazing that she did that. And anyway, so I would go in and cat sit. while they were away. So this went on for years and years. But this particular year, the builders were in, hooking us up all to the grid to get the healing, get the waters flowing through the pipes. And poor Sammy, her cat, was a flat cat. Like, we lived on the top floor. He never went out. He was very highly strung.
All right.
Very
that he lived in a flat, not flat that he was crushed.
Oh no, not flat cat, not that flat. That would be really bad, wouldn't it? I'm there with you, actually. I'm there with you. Yeah, but no, thankfully he didn't have that going on, which is just as well, because he had enough going on in his life. But he was very, very highly strung. He was the most anxious cat I've ever met in my life, actually. And I made it a thing that whenever I went in when they were away, I'd always stroke him for, like, at least, if I could hear him purr for 20 minutes a day, while his owners were away, I thought I've done as much as I can, as well as obviously feed him, but give him that. Anyway, long story short, the builders were in, so and they had to come in. We had like 9 months or 10 months of just complete upheaval. You had builders in and out all the time. You couldn't let them not come in, because everything had to be done to all the flats all at timed. So his owners were away, the builders were in, he lost it completely. He had a panic. He was panicking. Mm-hmm. He was literally climbing the walls. Bless his heart. He was literally climbing the walls, because he was out of his head. He was out of his box with fear. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't let me near him to stroke him. So I was learning reflexology at the time, and just kind of stepping on that path. And there was a woman in our group who I call a wise woman. I think now I've come into that category myself a bit, but anyway. Mm-hmm. So Jenny was a wise woman. I asked her advice. I said, well, what should I do with this cat? I don't know what to do. Because she had cats, and I just thought she would know. And she said, rescue remedy. Try rescue remedy. And I was like, oh God, really? Because I'd heard about it and I thought it was a load of rubbish. Right. I thought that's all placebo, because this is me with my archaeology head on. Bear in mind, I hadn't had my spiritual awakening yet. I was still very much in that. Well, where's the evidence for that? That's just placebo. That's just nonsense. But I thought, well, I've asked for the help. I can't ignore it. So I went to Holland and Barrett, and I was kind of all the way there and all the way back. I was like, oh God, it's a load of crap, isn't it? But anyway, I literally didn't believe it at all. But I thought, well, I've got to do it. So I bought £3.45, or it was for part of this stuff. And she said, use less for an animal. They need less than humans. So I put a drop in his food, and I ran out the flat, because he was so, he was just out of his mind. And I was actually dreading going back into feeding, because he was being so vicious and awful. Anyway, so I went back into his next feed, and guess what happened?
He was asleep.
He was completely transformed. He wasn't asleep. He was relaxed. He was like, he came out, I'll never forget it as long as I live. He came out of the lounge into the hallway, into the kitchen, and he sauntered. Like, he just kind of, and I was stood there, and he came around me, and he's brushed by my legs like cats do. He'd never ever done that, ever done that. And I'd never seen him so cool, never seen him so relaxed. And I remember standing there in Anita's kitchen going, oh my God. And I could actually feel, it's like my head flipped. It was almost like, I think now what happened was my two hemispheres of my brain crossed over, I think, because I literally felt my head flip, because as a trained scientist, as trained to observe, I just had to observe.
Yeah.
And the thing I observed was this cat changing its personality, is changing completely. And the only variable, as we would call it, the only thing that had changed was I'd given him. And I hadn't said to him, Sammy, this is going to help you, because of course I didn't believe it anyway, and also he's a cat.
Yeah.
So all of the things.
I talk like cats all the time.
Well, I do now, but we're going back 20 years ago now. So, but yeah, nearly 20 years ago, I suppose. Anyway, but yeah, so that was the beginning, and I remember walking out the door and thinking, wow, this is something. There's something really big here. This is quite, and I'm still really grateful to Sammy, and I'm still really grateful when I share this story, because I think because of my level of cynicism, I needed to see that with my own eyes, because I wonder now if that was a human, so that had been you, or that had been anyone else, and you were in a bit of, you were having a meltdown, and you were really upset, and I gave you something. I said, look, take some rescue remedy, it will help you. I might still think, is that just me? Is that just placebo? Is that just me saying that when that happened? But because it was a cat,
yeah,
I have no grain of doubt in my mind that they had the power of them. So yeah, So it's gone from there, really.
Where did you go from there? Because you started doing your own essences.
Yeah, well, that came along a lot longer. It was about at least 10 years before I started to do my own. I never thought I would do my own, ever. It was not on my radar at all. It's just something, a process that's just continued to happen and still happens, really. And every time it happens, I'm going, wow, it's amazing. So, but the chain of events was after I'd finished my courses at Southampton City College. I did aromatherapy and reflexology. And I had all these people lined up because, you know, you have to do case studies, don't you, before they let you loose on the public.
Yeah.
And with iTech stuff, especially, you've got to do like loads and loads of case studies and big exam and all the rest. And so there I was, still thinking I'm going back into archaeology. But at the end of my training, and I really enjoyed it, and of course my channel had opened and everything in my life was different. I've learned to meditate and everything was changing. I had this group of people, my case studies, saying, okay, Sharon, where do you work then? I want to come and carry this on. This is amazing. You know, you're amazing, and all this healing, and my life's changing, and this is incredible. And where do you work? I want to come and see you regularly. And I'm like, I don't work anywhere. I'm just doing this for a hobby, you know, until I go back to work. Yeah. And then I started thinking, I thought, well, I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm really good at it. Perhaps I could make a living from this. You know, perhaps I should do this. So I just went for it. I completely jumped in. I dived in. I wouldn't recommend anyone do this. But I did. That's me. I've got an Aries ascendant, and I'm kind of a bit, you know, I'm quite passionate about certain things. So I basically set myself up in a chiropractic clinic. I had a massage room, and it was wonderful. So I worked with chiropractors and acupuncturists. I had a clinic. It was a clinic setting, so that was really good for me. I paid a lot of money for it because obviously you have to pay, you know, sort of like reception costs and everything. So I paid a high amount of money for the clinic rent. But it was fine because I earned that money back eventually. It took me 3 years.
Startup business costs, isn't it? You know?
All of that, exactly. It's, you know, so I just threw myself into it. I mean, I think the first year I very nearly starved, and I wasn't a very good model of how to look after yourself because, you know, I was working so hard to take care of everyone else. Yeah. But I wasn't really taking great care of myself because I was just very enthusiastic about the business. But anyway, so 95, 96, I set up and I just built that up. And come 99, I then went into teaching, actually back at the college that I trained at. I was invited to go in and teach because I had a flourishing practice and I had loads of, you know, people wanted to learn about stuff. So I became a lecturer at City College for 3 years. Yeah. And at the same time, still running a practice, and I just carried on. I just worked my little heart out, really. Yeah. And I loved it. And I was very fortunate because I could literally, I got to a point where I could, and I still hold this part within me, but I don't use it, but I could literally, because I was seeing so many clients, you know, like 30 or 40 people a week, which is a lot. You know, I was very finely tuned to, you know, and I learned quickly about the mind-body link because I'd started to incorporate other elements into my massage practice. Like obviously aromatherapy was there straight away. Yeah. Reflexology was there, but then essences came in as the more because basically I parked flower essences for quite a few years because I was so immersed in the essential oils. And I was like, that's too complicated. There's so many. But they just kind of came in imperceptibly. And then because I was working with a lot of people who'd had accidents and been in car accidents, car crashes, lots of people with chronic illness, I started to use the essences in massage. Right. So I would drop them in and it was amazing. The shock and the trauma would clear. It was absolutely astonishing in front of my eyes. So over time, I began to use more essences and less, you know, the essences just came in more and more and more. And then it was around 2005. So I'd been working in my practice about 9-10 years. I just started to get this message from my higher self that I had to slow down. Right. Because I was at burnout. I was just amazingly good at taking care of everyone else. Yeah. But I hadn't given myself a proper holiday. I mean, my holidays were going on training courses. Sorry, Jackie.
You're very much a people person. So that
I am.
You were.
And I was giving and giving and giving, but it wasn't given to me. Yeah. I wasn't given to me.
So where would you say you are now? What is your main focus? What is your main work? Because I know you work with mushroom essence.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the mushroom essence is amazing. Well, basically my main work is to help people recover from adrenal fatigue and burnout, because that's what I had. You know, I burnt myself out eventually, so I had to give up my practice, and I had to hire 2 people to take over from me, because no one person could. So my journey since then has been very much, and that just started out just before a series of a big grief cycle of about 9 years of losing a lot of loved ones, and lots of that big grief journey. And as the essences have come through, they've all helped to heal different aspects of grief, or different aspects of not knowing how to take care of ourselves. You know, all the lessons that I needed to learn have come to me now through the essences.
Yeah.
So the mushroom essence that came through not last autumn, the one before, in southwest France, is very much for connecting with it's actually for connecting with natural light levels.
Right.
That's really important.
That's fascinating how it's all interwoven.
It's all interwoven.
Yeah.
I know that essence. I mean, of all the essences I've made, there are 3 in particular which are unbelievably important for this time that we're in now, because the mushroom essence, what it does is it helps to connect to the natural light rhythms as they exist on this planet, you know, and so in a consequence, that helps with sleep. Also helps to absorb fear.
Okay.
Like deep subconscious fear
right now.
Which is very prevalent, especially because people are, you know, if you like, we don't have the usual distractions that keep us away from our innermost fears. So for a lot of people, they're just kind of coming up, and they don't kind of know what to do with them. They can't handle them. And a lot of those are ancestral as well. So a lot of stuff that's been buried, when you think about mushrooms, a lot of it is under the ground. The bit you see is just the fruiting body. But the mycelium network is obviously...
Say, what's that called, that network?
That network, mycelium network.
Wow.
And that's basically, that is our original... that's our original broadband. That's our fibre optic broadband under the ground, which we all connect to each other with if we put our minds to it.
Fascinating. And we could go on talking, well, all afternoon.
We could quite easily. Let's set up a separate thing where we just talk all afternoon.
We're already 23 minutes. So
seriously,
a minute interview.
See what I mean? I could go on and on. See what I mean? Once I get going.
Let me just ask you one final question, and then obviously we'll put all your website and details in the blurb under the recording in the post. But I guess if you had a message for the world right now, and where we are, this is January 2021, what would you say?
I would say open up your heart and let the river of love flow through.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
That's a song that I've sung in the choir.
Susie
Rowe, we actually sang it at Sink for Water in London a few years ago. But yeah, so open up your heart.
Oh, beautiful. And let the river of love flow through. I put you on the spot there, but often that the first thing that comes into your mind is just...
I love it. That's really lovely. Thank you.
So Sharon, thank you so much for joining me for our 10-minute, actually 23
minute.
And we'll perhaps have another little chat.
Let's do that. That'd be really nice.
Because the work Sharon does is absolutely wonderful. I've had essences from her before, and she's a special friend, and she does very, very special work. So if you feel this is a fit for you, look at the details that I shall post underneath, and get in touch. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks very much.
The next one will be coming along very soon. So thank you, Sharon.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Thanks, everyone.
So let me just stop the recording.